Hello, fellow collectors, and welcome to Long's Toys. Today we are taking a look at Ultimate X-Spanse, the X-Men and Transformers crossover toy you didn't know you needed in your life, but you absolutely do. So they have taken a Studio Series Jetfire toy and repainted it and remolded it to look like the Blackbird from X-Men. Now, okay, it does say X-Jet down here, and I know in the movies they called it the X-Jet. But can we all agree that's a terrible name? I mean, it's just not imaginative at all. Like, the Blackbird was such a cool name. It's what they called it in the 90s cartoon. To me, it's always going to be the Blackbird. If you want to call it the X-Jet, go ahead. But, I don't know. Kind of a boring name in my opinion. But the toy looks great. So let's get back to the toy. You have some effect weapon pieces down here. You have two little figurines, one of Wolverine and Sabretooth, which didn't need to come with this set, but I think it's a fun little thing to include. I don't think they're going to fit inside the jet in any way. I think they're just kind of extra little accoutrements, but it's still fun. I just still think that's pretty neat. I also want to talk about the packaging because they have done an excellent job, not 100% replicating, but just doing something in the same style as the original Toy Biz packaging from the 90s. They crushed it. I mean, especially like the way the name is written down here and that kind of like bar of red that trails off. It's really, really well done doing something in the style of that original Toy Biz packaging. They absolutely crushed it, and I love it. I 100% love it. Ultimate X-Spanse, like I get it, X-Men, X-Spanse, but again, I feel like they could have. I would rather them just call it the Blackbird, or the he just be called Blackbird or something. I don't know. The name needs work. Ultimate X-Spanse. I'm sorry, it's not that great. But anyway, let's get back to the good things. So checking out the packaging. Up here we have just kind of a shot of the vehicle mode and the robot mode with little figurines and everything like that. Not too much going on the bottom. Some really nice artwork here of the robot mode, and that is over here on the side as well. I believe it's exactly the same artwork. But on this side, you actually have some artwork straight out of the 90s cartoon. You have Wolverine and Sabretooth straight out of that 90s cartoon. That's really, really cool. I was not expecting that. So that's really fun. And then on the back again, you have this kind of like word blast, which again, very reminiscent of the original packaging. And I'm really excited for this one. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. The robot mode looks great. The vehicle mode looks great. I'm super excited. I think it's funny they also have to, I guess, shout out Lockheed Martin because they must have something to do with the development of the jet that this is molded after, so that's kind of neat too. But anyway, so love the packaging. Very excited for this. Going to go ahead and get this out of the box so we can take a closer look. So here is the Ultimate X-Spanse out of the packaging. I'm going to be honest, I'm probably just going to call it the Blackbird for the rest of the review, and I apologize, but the Ultimate X-Spanse is just, it's not a good name. I'm sorry. But anyway, before we dive into the jet, let's take a look at the two little figurines. So they're pretty cool. I think, honestly, surprisingly, I think Sabretooth is a little bit better executed. Wolverine looks neat, but because of the weird stance they gave him, he will not stand up on his own. Like earlier, I had kind of Sabretooth propping him up with his hand to keep him from falling over. But he's all front heavy because of the claws, and because of the weird stance they gave him, he will not stand on his own. It just is not going to happen. Sabretooth, no problem. I think Sabretooth is actually in a pretty cool pose, and I think he looks pretty good. There's a lot of nice molded in detail there. He's just not very much painted. You can see like the stripes on his leg. I mean, if someone wanted to come in here and paint this guy up, I think it could actually look pretty cool. Unfortunately, with Wolverine, they made the decision to mold him completely out of yellow plastic and then try to paint the face, and it doesn't work. I'm sorry. It looks really weird. And because he's molded in yellow and they really had to glob the paint over top of the yellow so it doesn't bleed through, you can see that like the blue parts look kind of thick with paint, a little gloopy. But I think the silver looks pretty good on the claws. So I appreciate what they tried to do. And like they said, they didn't have to include these at all. I mean, I would have been very happy with the figure just on its own. But I think it's neat they tried and they included these. When I first saw these, when they first announced this thing, immediately, and I don't know if anyone else remembers these, but back in the 90s, little miniatures were all the craze. Mighty Max, Micro Machines, everybody had a small, miniature version of their product line. X-Men, Ninja Turtles, everyone. So Toy Biz back in the day did something they called pocket comics. And it was a little plastic rectangle that had like a cover of a comic on the front. You opened it up and there's a little playset inside. And they came with little figurines just like this. So when I saw these, it immediately made me think of it. And I was able to actually find my old ones. So here is the Wolverine from the Toy Biz pocket comics. And you can just see what a much better job they did painting the Toy Biz one. I will say the red belt looks nice over here, and I think the claws are more successful on the Hasbro one because he's got really dinky little claws. But they painted his face, they painted the eyes, they painted the arms, and this guy does have some gloopy paint as well. He's also got 1 point of articulation. The waist can spin, and this one doesn't. And I think he can stand on his own. Yeah, so he's got a much better stance. So I got to give it to the Toy Biz one, but I will say the Hasbro one probably wins with the claws. But I just think it's really funny that, like I said, it very much reminds me of these. So if you have these, you could use them with this. Like I said, there's no way they fit in the jet, so they're just to be, you know, supplemental. But here is the Sabretooth one, which again, I think I really like the pose on this one. I think they did a nice job there, but obviously this one is much better painted. And again, he's got that 1 point of articulation in the waist there. So, I don't know. I think they're pretty cool. I'm glad they included them. They really didn't have to. I mean, they're just little supplemental pieces, but... Oh, I did want to show this off real quick. So, this little piece, I thought this was supposed to be like a Psylocke like headpiece or something at first, but it doesn't really work on the head of the robot at all. They advertise that you're supposed to put it around their waist. I don't know why, but that's what they show off doing with it in the directions. I don't know what this does, but whatever. So these are kind of fun. Like I said, definitely not necessary, but they're a fun little include. And, you know, I think the Sabretooth one is a little bit better, but they're still fun. So putting that all aside, let's go ahead and get into the jet itself. I think it looks really cool. This is definitely like the one they used in the movie more so than the original cartoon, because the original cartoon definitely looks similar. Oop, and these fall off all the time. They always unpeg. But so these wings are definitely what I remember. These, I like to call them like Cyclonus wings because that's what it makes me think of. You know, the inverted facing wings, whatever you would call them. But in the one from the cartoon, this wasn't quite as long. This section here was, you know, fairly long, but the wings were much bigger. They were more centrally located. They kind of came out here. They didn't have these giant engines on the side here. So it was very similar design, but I think it was a more kind of stylized cartoony design, whereas this is actually modeled after an actual jet. So, plus this is the one they made Studio Series Jetfire out of, so this is the one we're getting. But they do have the wings to some degree. They have the X symbol painted on them, which I like, but these are really loose. You can see this here. Like, they kind of come up and lock into place, but if you just kind of even gently brush them, and I've had them just completely pop off a lot, especially during transformation. So, you know, that's a problem. It's not great. It's not a huge problem. I mean, if you really wanted, you could probably just, you know, pop a little bit of super glue or something, because in the transformation, you don't really need to bend them back, and I'll show you that as we go. But you have some landing gear underneath here, you can see, and you can go ahead and fold that in just like that, and fold these in. Now, really, they just have you fold it in like this, but this is going to be the belt of the robot mode. You can kind of see some of the robot kibble under here. When he's in robot mode, I like to bend these an additional 180 back so that they kind of just go along the side of his waist, and then they kind of blend in really nice. But if you just want the jet mode to fly, you can just leave them up this far, so that way you can pull them back out pretty easily. So you can retract and deploy the landing gear fairly simply. And that looks pretty cool there. So overall in the jet mode, with the exception of the dinky wings, I think it looks pretty good. I didn't show these off yet, but I'll show those off real quick. So he does have two kind of energy weapons. We saw them in the packaging. One is claws like Wolverine, and then I'm assuming this is supposed to be like a Psylocke blade. And we'll get into that more in robot mode. But there are two little connector pieces right behind what will become the shoulders. So if you want to store these in vehicle mode, you can. And they just peg in, where's the other one? Right here. And so you can store them underneath if you like. So that's nice. But like I said, these will come into play more in the robot mode. So speaking of the robot mode, let's go ahead and get into this transformation. So in my opinion, it's a fairly complicated transformation. Once you do it a couple times and get the hang of it, it's not too bad. But that first time you're going through directions, it seems kind of daunting. But it's not too bad. So we'll take a look at how this goes. So first we're going to retract the landing gear, push that back. These will become the feet. you're going to kind of just bring these down. They will kind of click, one ratchet click down like that. You're going to come underneath here, and this little panel folds out. You're going to do that on both sides. Come to the top, and there goes one of the wings already. I'm just going to leave it off for now. Honestly, they're going to just keep falling off. You can kind of unclick this, like I showed earlier, how these kind of just fall off all the time. And basically all it is there's a tiny loop. I don't know if you can see this, but there's a tiny loop right there. And there's just a little peg right there. Let me see if I can get in closer. So that little peg is supposed to go into that little loop, and it holds decently. It doesn't fall off all the time, but it's kind of like the wings where it'll stay until you kind of knock it with your hand or something, and then they're going to kind of fall off. But there's another little panel underneath here, right here, that you need to kind of wiggle your finger in there and pull that out as well. So, and there's a little bit of a clearance issue, but you can get it. It's not a big problem. Then you're going to come to these big engines, and these are going to kind of lift up. And as you bring this away from the body, you can get this all the way up like that, and that's going to become kneecaps. So at this point, you have to lift this section back like this, and then you can kind of bring what will become the legs down. So there's a big ratchet joint right here, and just kind of straighten that out to get this out of the way. So this is where it gets interesting. So you can see here that this engine piece kind of has this seam running down the center. So you're going to kind of, on both sides, lift this away, and it's on like a hinge. So if you see, if I lift this up, and let me get in here so you can see this, there's kind of a hinge here. So that way you can kind of collapse it against, but then you want to kind of pull it back up. And then after you do that, you need to swivel it 180 degrees and then push it back down. And you have to do that on both sides. So this one will also lift away and then rotate around and then collapse back against. Or maybe this one goes up, I'm sorry. So when you do that, you're going to see, once I zoom out, you're going to see that kind of, they collapse together. There's a little bit larger seam in between, but you have that. Now you have your new kneecap. You're going to take this piece and flip it around and then kind of collapse it down like that. And you're forming the leg now. So this panel here has a big tab, and then there's a tab spot right here. So you're going to close that in, and that'll kind of shore the leg together. It stays fairly decently on its own. Then you can bend this, swivel, bend this down, and then you kind of have one of your legs. So at this point, you're just going to flip this wing piece around like that. And then if you have this thing connected still. So again, this is where if you had it, like if you had glued it, it would just stay out like that. So that's really just out to the side, or you can collapse it like this. Honestly, either way, I think it looks just as good. So I'm thinking about just gluing it, because just having it sweep straight back is perfectly fine with me. So let's go ahead and get this done again. So we have to open this up. And sometimes it's just a little difficult to do because you have all this weight just hanging here. So I like to just rest it on the ground sometimes. So lift this up, swivel, rest this up, swivel, collapse down, collapse up. Then we can bring, and these ratchet joints are pretty heavy, which is good because he's got a lot of weight to distribute. So, but you just kind of have to give him a little bit of oomph sometimes. So bring this up, bring this around, peg that in, straighten out your feet, and then you can collapse these wings down. And there you go. You pretty much have the full legs of the robot mode done. Now, he doesn't really have the best heels. He's got decent heels. I wish he had, like, I wish this touched the ground, but you can see it doesn't quite, which is a bummer. But we'll get there. So let's go ahead and continue on with the torso. I'm going to do my best to zoom out and see if I can, you know what, I think I'm going to move the camera around so we can get a better look at this. All right, so at this point it's very tall, as you can see. So you're going to start, and there's this weird joint here you can see in the torso, and I'm going to move these down just for a moment. But this kind of like rocks side to side, as you can see, which I think is a weird choice. And he's also got kind of an abdomen crunch. So it makes for an interesting robot mode, but we'll get there in a moment. So you first want to kind of unhook this section and these panels here. They pop out, and they're a little hard to maneuver, but you have to get them to kind of pop out and then go to the side. And you can see there's a swivel joint in there, right there. So that's the piece that you're swiveling out to the side. So let me zoom back out. So this unhooks because there is a peg right here. You can see, well, maybe you can't see because the light is not cooperating, but you can see that there's a peg hole right there and a peg. So you have to unhook that and then swivel this out. Once you do that, you can pull this part away and just kind of drop that back for a moment. And then this section is going to unpeg and kind of just rest back here for a moment. At this point, you can pull the arms apart. Oh, that's not good. That was supposed to be connected to this. Did that just break off? Okay, great. So this is something we're learning firsthand. This is supposed to connect to this. I don't think that's going to be a problem because it looks like it just pegs back on there. So it looks like it was kind of like loosely pegged on there and maybe had like the tiniest little bit of super glue just to keep it in place. But these two pegs were pegged in right here and here. So I guess just be careful with that. I don't think it's going to be a problem, but you can see we'll pull the arms down. So at this point, I'm going to take these landing gear pieces and rotate those back like I talked about, so they don't really get in the way because they kind of go towards the back. And you still have that kind of weird ab joint there. So we brought the shoulders down like this. Then you can kind of straighten out. Now these don't click into place. I kind of wish they did. They just kind of hang around. Now you can bring down the arms like this, and there's some really nice joints there. But anytime you want to move that, it kind of moves this piece still, which is a bummer. But you're going to take this piece and rotate it like that, and then this whole thing is going to come around and clip into place like that, and then you pretty much have your arms. So the arms are pretty solid because they're mostly just arms in the vehicle mode. They just kind of hide underneath, so you don't have to worry too much about moving them around because they're pretty solid. Now you're going to come to the torso here, and there's just kind of this wide cavity here, and there's really nowhere for this to, it drops down, but it doesn't peg into place. So this kind of comes down, and you have to make sure that the head stays where it's supposed to, because you can see the head's up behind there. And so this just kind of drops down, and then this will flip down and fill in that space with the nice X-Men logo. But this really doesn't like clip into place. Like this just kind of rests here. And it's fine in the way that it doesn't really move all that much, but if you try to move the head around a lot, you can see it kind of moves that, which is a bummer. I wish that kind of like clipped into place down there somewhere, but it just doesn't really. So now you have all of this back kibble, and you're going to unpeg this and stretch this out. And then again, just kind of let this hang down for the moment. It's going to drop down like that and kind of peg into itself. Then you can see there's a hinge here, so this is going to fold in half, and that's going to peg in on that piece. Did I put that on right? Yeah, so you can see that there's a peg hole right there, and there is a peg on that. So that should peg into there, assuming it's lined up still, which it might not be because it fell off. It kind of doesn't appear to be. You also have to clear this piece because you want this to, and these kind of get in the way and are a pain in the butt, these flaps here. So we have to clear this. Come on, there we go. So that that can stay up like that. And then this is going to come down I really need this to clip into this. Is this not lined up anymore? Let me see, maybe I'll do it this way. I'm thinking this is how this must have went. So this would be like this. This would clip onto here. There we go. Okay, so that clips in. Then this comes up, and there is a, and again, there's a lot of shadow here, but there's a tab here that's going to peg into one of these pegs. It's either this one or this one. I can't remember which. I think it's the more bottom one. Yeah, and then that just all kind of collapses against the back. And then you just bring these up as far as you can. And there you go. There is your ultimate X-Spanse robot mode. You can kind of play with these pieces to angle them how you like. But yeah, there we go. So like I said, the transformation's a little convoluted at first, and certainly trying to do it in front of a camera is more difficult than just transforming it on your own. So I apologize if I didn't get all the best angles through that transformation, but there's a lot of moving pieces and there's a decent amount of back kibble. And apparently that piece broke off, which is interesting. Now the nice thing is it clips back on. It was probably like clipped on with a little bit of glue, and the glue probably just came off. So I feel like as long as you can make everything clip into place still, it shouldn't be that much of an issue. But just something to definitely be aware of when you're handling yours if you decide to pick this up, because you definitely don't want that piece to break off and get lost, because you really need it for both versions of the both robot and vehicle mode. So you definitely need that piece, so just be a little wary of that. But I still think that the robot mode looks really good. The paint applications are great. I mean, the yellow really pops against the blue. You have a little bit of silver as well. They did a great job with the X-Men symbol, both on the belt and this kind of harness, I guess, for lack of a better term. I love the Cyclops visor. I think that's fantastic. You can tilt that back. It's a little difficult to do because it's kind of tight, but he does have normal red eyes underneath there. Really nicely painted silver face. I love him with the visor, so I'm going to go ahead and put that back down. So articulation wise, the head is on a hinge, so it can look up probably about that far because it kind of hits into the back here. It can look down. It can definitely spin side to side. I wish it had a little bit further back. I mean, you can kind of just force it back a little bit, so you can look up a little bit. But you can also see how much it moves the chest around when I do this, and that's really a bummer. I wish this pegged in and snapped in some way so that you could really move the head, you know, without it flopping around. You can just hold it, obviously, but I don't know. I just feel like I really wish that snapped in. You have this movement here in the shoulder, and it's almost kind of like a mini ball joint because it does have a little bit of play all the way around like that. I wish this pegged in and snapped in as well. It doesn't. Again, not a huge problem, but I wish that snapped in. And I keep checking it because I'm like, am I missing something? Is there somewhere to snap it in that I'm missing? Should I try to force this up? I mean, I guess that does kind of, if you... I like the look of this angle better with the shoulder. I could kind of like force that piece in there, but then it's at kind of a weird angle. I mean, that will keep it... It still moves around, so it's not even really worth doing. I'm just going to leave it like that. You have a swivel here in the shoulder as well as a hinge. And again, it's a really nice heavy-duty hinge, but it ends up moving the shoulder at the actual torso connection than it does moving the hinge. You have a bicep swivel. You have, I would say, at least 90 degrees, maybe a little bit back the other way in the elbow. And then you have a wrist rotation. You have that weird torso joint that I talked about earlier where it kind of rocks from side to side. And he has kind of an ab crunch. So it's a little weird, but it's there if you want it. You have a waist swivel under the belt. You have really tight ratchet here in the hip, so you can go out to the side, front to back. You have a thigh swivel. You have nice ratcheting joint in the knee. And there's other joints in there as well, but that's really for the transformation. But he's got a really solid knee joint. And then you do have like an ankle tilt and a little bit of front and back with the toe as well if you need it. So he's pretty good on articulation. I think they did a nice job, and I really, really like the design of him, and the color scheme I think really, really pops. Now, of course, you have those energy weapons, and you have these big peg holes here on the back of the hand, so you can just go ahead and peg those in, no problem. And then you can peg in the Wolverine claw, which I think looks really good. So both of these I think look really good, and you can, you know, kind of do what you want as far as posing. I almost kind of wish he had a double jointed elbow, just so I could get more of a, you know, having the claws straight up kind of pose. But still looks really cool. I like it a lot. So you can do something like that. They also tell you to, let me tilt this up just a smidge. They show you like displaying the figures up here. I mean, you can if you want. If you want to just, you know, put some, they don't even really stand that well. It would have been nice if it had like a little peg hole and I could, you know, peg hole in the, or a peg on the wing and a peg hole in the bottom of the foot. But alas, did not happen. So just going to kind of keep that off to the side. But yeah, I really think he looks good. I really, really like the design. I really like the color scheme. I think he's got great articulation. I think the Energon weapons are really fun. You know, all in all, I just think it's a really great robot. I think this is a really fun set. Yes, it's not perfect. I had a couple problems with mine. You have those loose wings on the back of the leg in the robot mode that kind of fall off all the time during transformation and really don't even stay that well in the jet mode. You have that piece that broke off on the back, but like I said, I'm really hoping that's not going to be a problem because most of the time it's pegged into something else that's very solid, so it should just be able to kind of sandwich and stay together with friction. I don't think that piece is going to fall off a lot. Just kind of have to keep an eye on it so I don't lose it. But, you know, little problems like that aside, he's a great looking robot. They really did a nice job. They took an existing Transformer for Studio Series Jetfire and, you know, just realized that it's the same jet as the Blackbird or the X-Jet, whatever you want to call it. And it's a great mashup. It really is. I think it looks great in the jet mode. It has those kind of tinted red windows, just like the original cartoon. The shade of navy blue, I think they nailed. Really good job with that. And then in the robot mode, a lot of nods to the X-Men. You have Cyclops' visor. You have the Wolverine energy claw. You have the Psylocke energy blade. The X symbol here on the harness and the belt. Fantastic. I feel like these pockets are kind of a nod to Cyclops' costume as well. Even the harness is kind of a nod to that as well. And just the color scheme, the bright yellow with the navy blue with a little bit of silver for accent and that red, all really pops. Looks fantastic. The little figurines, they're not the best. They've been kind of doing this thing where they put like Slimer with Ectotron. They didn't give us any little figurines with Gigawatt, I noticed. But then we got the little motorcycle with Maverick. So they've been trying to do this thing where they give us like a little figurine to go with these crossovers. They're nice. I don't need them. I'm buying it for the robot, but they're nice. I think the Sabretooth one is a little bit more successful than the Wolverine just because that face paint is yikes. And his weird stance makes it so he can't really stand on his own. Another reason it would have been nice to have peg holes on the bottom of their feet and maybe little pegs on the wings if they really want me to position them up there, then I could just peg them on. It would have been nice. And also you get this little weird piece that you're supposed to put around their waist. I mean, you can. I don't really understand what that does, but it's there. So, I don't know. But in any case, I definitely recommend picking this up. I think the robot looks great. The jet looks great. The transformation, like I said, it's a little wonky at first, especially going back to the jet when you have to kind of line up all the legs and get that back into the engine there for the jet. But a couple times you'll get the hang of it, and then it's not too bad. So I would just hang in there with that. But I definitely would think it's worth picking up. Now, this was originally like a timed Target exclusive, or Target got it first. But I think Hasbro Pulse has it now for pre-order. So if you're looking for this, definitely check Target, check Hasbro Pulse. Those would probably be your best bets. I think as of right now, those are the only two places carrying it, but it may open up over time. I also have to shout out the packaging again one more time because they did an excellent job creating something reminiscent of that original 90s Toy Biz packaging, and that's very nostalgic for me, and I love it. Plus, you actually have the actual animation from the 90s cartoon on the one side of the box, which is also a real treat I was not expecting. So, yeah, I don't really have too much to complain about. Like I said, the few little issues I had with mine, hopefully you won't necessarily have with yours. And even in spite of those little issues, I still think it's a great release. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. And as always, thanks so much for watching.